Well, today I have Ulrich Dempfle, who engineered and developed the world's only reduced exertion RE-HIIT bike. Alongside leading exercise researchers, Ulrich is the co-founder of Carol, a bike that can get you fit in 5 minutes. Yes, you heard that right, and he has the science to prove it. Ulrich Dempfle. How am I pronouncing that? Do you like that?
That's excellent. That's about as good as it gets for non-Germans.
Okay, but let me see if I can get it good as a German. Watch this. Ulrich Dempfle.
Yeah, that is really good. So I would introduce myself usually as Ulrich, somehow like Eric Ulrich. But yeah, that was excellent. Ulrich Dempfle. My children can't pronounce it as well.
Well, I have to say I'm so happy that you're here because my mother-in-law has been using the Carol bike for the last, 2 through 3 months, perhaps. She's lost 20 pounds.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really awesome. I'm so pleased to hear that it works for her. I mean, that's about the amount of weight that I dropped when I started using Carol, when we had like the first working prototypes that actually worked. So well done to her. I'm very, very pleased to hear that.
And I think the thing about it, the reason that I thought it would work so well for her was previous to that, she'd come to me. She had high cholesterol. She was struggling with her weight. She wanted to lose weight, and she was also pre-diabetic. And she came to me and she was like, I want to go on a regimen. I'm like, okay, so let's walk for half an hour a day. And for some reason that just wasn't, she couldn't commit to it. And then it was like, okay, well, how about lifting weights for 15 minutes a day? Couldn't commit to it. 5 minutes on a bike. Can you do 5 minutes a day? And she can commit to that. And I think that's why this is so special. It's because for people who struggle to commit to an hour a day, 5 days a week, let's just say, it's very, very difficult for them to commit to that. But 5 minutes a day on a bike in your garage, that's easy to commit to.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't even have to do it every day. So 3 times a week, that's what we recommend. And yeah, so it summarizes why we've developed the bike, because so many are struggling to get sufficient exercise, and it really has become that the couch is the biggest killer. And so that was our intention, to develop such a bike to overcome those barriers to exercise. And yes, so 5 minutes to find the time should really be, that should work for most people. We're not saying it's, so those 5 minutes, there's 2 20 seconds. So it's basically all the training stimulus comes from 2 20-second sprints. And then there's a little bit of warm-up, recovery, and cool down. And those 2 20-second sprints are quite intense. So it's not quite a free lunch or that you get something for nothing. So you have to work for it, but it overcomes the time barrier, and you can fit it, like most people should be able to fit it even in the most busy schedule.
Yes, I can attest to that. The 2 20-second sprints are difficult, but you think about 40 seconds of a day. And there was a few moments with my mother-in-law where she was waning in her interest in the bike. Like I was like, have you done it today? She's like, no. And I go, Tracy, 5 minutes, 40 seconds. And she's like, I only want to do the 10-second sprint. I'm like, no, you're going to do 2 times 20 seconds. It's 40 seconds of your day. That is difficult. And that's what it takes, for this metabolic health. And it was amazing that I had to like try and convince her of that. Eventually convinced. And it's clearly worked for her. But let's go from the beginning, because most people listening will be wanting to hear about how you can get fit and lose weight in 5 minutes. How is this the case? Like, how is this possible?
Yeah, sure. So Carol has been designed to be the bike that gets you fittest, fastest. And the magic all happens in those 2 20-second sprints. So with Carol's AI and the personalized resistance, and the instant resistance, how it's applied, you manage to push to your limits in those 2 20-second sprints. And with that, with going all out in those 2 20-second sprints, you your muscles demand about 100-fold more energy than at rest, and you force them to mobilize a large amount of muscular glycogen. So muscular glycogen is like sugar stored locally in the muscle. It's your emergency energy reserve. When your aerobic kind of energy system isn't fast enough to provide all that energy and isn't able to satisfy this massive peak, you have to tap into your glycogen reserves. It's an anaerobic exercise. And you mobilize loads of that glycogen. You don't actually use it. So there's a little trick in there. So you just mobilize lots of that glycogen. And because your emergency energy reserves get depleted, your body sends a signal to itself. So it releases a molecule called AMPK that is bound to that glycogen. And so if it's taken out of the stores, it gets released, and then downstream, another molecule called PGC1 alpha gets released and activated. And those are master regulators for many important functions in your body. So one is they regulate mitochondrial biogenesis. So mitochondria is what produces energy for your cells. And these molecules are the master regulators for how many mitochondria you develop and how large they are, and therefore basically how much energy you are able to produce.
Yes.
And the other thing that happens is you develop greater volume of blood plasma, and your heart gets stronger. And so this very short 220-second sprints and the release of the mobilization of that glycogen, even though you don't burn through all of it, is enough to trigger this stimulus. And I know it sounds quite hard to believe, but there's so we've not made this up. There's a ton of very serious scientific research independently from various universities that has proven that it works. And it gets more unbelievable. It's not just that 220-second sprints are enough. It's that more sprints or longer sprints would have less benefits. That's where people kind of think like, can that be? But it has been shown. And it's thought that if you do longer sprints, so if you do more traditional types of HIIT, and you have to do like 6 or 8 or 10 intervals, for 40, 50, 60 seconds, you can't operate at your maximum intensity. It's impossible. It would just hurt too much. And so there's like, you pace yourself. You go as far and as hard as you can, knowing that you have to do that many. Whereas we really do the minimum amount, but we help you to go really all out.
Yes.
And they're so short that almost the pain, there's a little bit of pain involved. Yeah, let's be honest.
There is. But those 20 seconds are tough.
Yeah, but it's almost the toughness comes after you've been through. So the last 5 seconds are tough, and then kind of catching your breath afterwards. Then you you notice like, holy, what was that? And then kind of, you recover quite quickly. But when I do the exercise, I find it's actually kind of just after the sprints that's hardest. Yeah.
Right.
Catching your breath again. And so it's like you trick yourself a little bit. You push through those 20 seconds, and then afterwards, that was really hard.
Yeah. So what I'm kind of hearing about the muscle glycogen is that the energy is mobilized, but it's not used. So therefore, like,
so you use a little bit of it.
Okay.
Just not the whole thing. So glycogen molecules are quite big molecules with lots of branched polysaccharides, so like sugar. And you just nibble off the very outer branches, and then the rest just floats around and gets broken down after the exercise, and it creates a decent amount of lactate that has other benefits actually. For example, that gets transported to the brain where it increases serotonin levels and it actually helps combat anxiety and just generally helps with your mood. But yeah, so you do use a little bit, just not the whole amount. Because your body doesn't know. Like, this is a fight or flight situation. You trick your body to perceive that as a threat. Like, you have to fight for your life or run for your life, and it doesn't know, but that this is just 20 seconds. So this might be a really dangerous situation, and you have to, I don't know, like it's like a death match. Yes. And so it provides all the energy that you could possibly need in this. But what we say is like, no, that's fine. After you've mobilized that glycogen, that's enough. Now we can stop again. So you don't have to go through with that death match.
Yes. Well, for anybody out there listening who's wondering about this, is curious, when I do the Carol bike, there's a voice talking to me through it that explains, while you're walking along, you're riding along on a peaceful day, it's a beautiful day, then out of the corner of your eye, you see something running at you, and it's a tiger, and you have to sprint. So you sprint for 20 seconds as hard as you possibly can, and at the end of the 20 seconds, the voice says, you're there, you're fine, you're safe, now breathe. And so exactly. That is actually, so in a way, that's what my question is, Ulrich. Is it a mimicry of nature? Is it a mimicry of nature in some way that when we were using energy as cavemen, that we would actually only sprint for short periods of time? We wouldn't be running for long, long periods of time.
So yes, exactly. And they're just different adaptation pathways. So certainly exercise usually works. There's a dose-response relationship. And generally, like, you get more benefits if you work longer or harder. And it's maybe not quite linear, but it's the more the better. Sure. And that's one pathway. And then we have this fight or flight pathway, this emergency situation pathway, where you just need this short, sharp shock. And that triggers a different adaptation pathway. And that would basically, simulate a caveman-like, hunter-gatherer-like situation where you have to fight for your life, run for your life. And basically, if these emergency energy reserves are depleted, if they're empty, that's a pretty stark signal to your body that it has to get fitter and stronger. So it's a severe disruption to what's called homeostasis. It's a very severe disruption to homeostasis. It's very momentary, but nevertheless, and that triggers the signal to your own body that it has to get fitter and stronger. And that's what happens. And it's very noticeable. So you get, you get the main benefits are you get a significant improvement in VO2 max. So that's your aerobic fitness and how much oxygen you can burn, essentially, how much oxygen you can use. Okay. And studies have shown, and this is quite consistent over several studies, that you get an improvement of around 12% in only 8 weeks. And to put that into context, so VO2 max is, so I just say it's the most important physical marker, like physiological marker. It's the best predictor of longevity. And so a 12% improvement in such a fundamental physiological marker is very significant. It's very noticeable. So it's not subtle at all. If you do this for 8 weeks, you will feel very clearly the benefits. Or another way of looking at it is if we, like during aging, we lose about 10% of VO2 max per decade. So in only 8 weeks, you can more than compensate a decade of aging and feel 10 years younger. That's pretty noticeable.
Let me just stop you there because I really want to understand VO2 max because I don't understand it. The way we use oxygen. Explain it to me like I'm 6.
Okay, sure. So VO2 max, so V is for speed. The O2 is for oxygen and max is just maximum. And it's your maximum ability to metabolize oxygen. So every process, where our cells basically create energy or exert power and so on. We burn either fat or sugar, both kind of chains of carbohydrates or carbon chains, also fat. It just gets broken down in more steps. So we burn carbohydrates to water, H2O, and carbon dioxide, CO2. And for aerobic activity, so your normal operating mode, normally you're in an aerobic state.
Okay.
Your rate of your ability to metabolize oxygen is your rate limiting factor. So if you do intensive exercise for a while, you hit a wall, or you can't go any further beyond your aerobic threshold. For a very short period of time, you can use different energy systems where you basically anaerobically create energy. And this is actually, so it's not quite, even though the sprints are anaerobic, the adaptation improves your aerobic fitness. So during the sprints, we use the anaerobic energy systems, which is first we use a little bit for 1 or 2 seconds, the ATP. So that's the unit of energy that cells use. That's just floating around. Then the next 8 to 10 seconds is the phosphocreatine system. We use that. And then we burn glycogen. So the sprints are just long enough that we go through these like ATP and phosphocreatine energy systems. Then tap into the glycogen system, but only long enough. So we don't have to, the glycogen system would last us for 60, 120 seconds, like 90 seconds roundabout. But we don't have to exhaust it. We only have to tap into it. It's enough to mobilize the glycogen.
Yes, it's like what you said before, like you're just taking off the edges of the glycogen.
Exactly.
But you are burning through the ATP and you're burning through the phosphocreatine, which is part of what you're saying is so advantageous to these short 20-second sprints, is that we get to burn through that where we otherwise maybe wouldn't if we were just doing a 30-minute jog.
Yeah, exactly. So you use different energy systems, and what you also improve your anaerobic fitness, but the main benefit is that you improve your aerobic fitness measured by VO2 max. And that's very noticeable. So your fitness levels improve.
So that would mean that your body would get better at using oxygen?
Absolutely. Yes.
Got it.
At using oxygen and at delivering oxygen. So there's two sides to that. Using oxygen, that's basically how many and how large mitochondria you have in your cells to basically burn carbohydrates into CO2 and water. The other is the oxygen delivery system. So that's your blood plasma volume, your cardiac peak flow, how much blood you can pump with each stroke, and also like how dense your capillary blood vessels are. So how well you can transport blood to your cells, and all of those improve. So this short, sharp stimulus improves all of those markers, has been shown. It improves mitochondrial mass, it improves cardiac peak flow, plasma volume, and the capillary density. Yeah.
Got it. Amazing. And this is all with a 5-minute sprint. So then that begs the question, I think a lot of people will be wondering about what is RE-HIIT, because this is a RE-HIIT bike, the reduced exertion HIIT bike. What is RE-HIIT? It's the way that I kind of view it is that it's like what we've just been talking about. It's like a HIIT workout, but doesn't burn through all of your stores.
Yeah. So it's based on HIIT. It's a more advanced, it's a improved version of HIIT. So HIIT clearly has many benefits, and people recognize that most people would be familiar with HIIT. But a HIIT session would typically take 15, 20, 30 minutes, has quite a lot of intervals, and would be perceived as quite hard by most people.
Yes.
And therefore, there's a quite high barrier for people to actually engage in that. And so this has been around for many years, and scientists have studied, well, what is the minimum dose you can get away with to still get all the benefits, and titrated it back and just, study after study, took out, used less sprints, used shorter sprints until they reached a limit. And yes, for example, 1 20-second sprint is not enough. So that doesn't work. So you do need two, because there's something about these molecules we talked about getting first released and then getting activated. So you seem to need 2 20-second sprints. And if you do shorter sprints, so we have on the bike, you can do 2 15-second sprints or 2 10-second sprints.
Tracy's favorite.
And they are actually substantially easier, and they're still worthwhile doing. So the 2 times 10-second version has been shown to still deliver some 40% of the benefits of the full 2 times 20 seconds workout. So they're good workouts, but so you get less of the benefits. But the thing with exercise is it's not a one-off solution. It's not something you do once and then you're done with it. You actually have to keep doing it. And therefore, while I think it's all wonderful how effective this is, adherence and being able to stick to it and build a sustainable habit and have something that actually fits your life is super important, because unfortunately, exercise is a bit like a diet, really. If you do a diet for 6 weeks, you'll see benefits and so on, and then you start eating normal again, and it'll also fade away. So you need something that's really sustainable, that fits into your life, and that you can do, whether it sunshines or rains, and you can really stick to it. So because you can build up a lot of benefits over 6 to 8 weeks, has been shown. Unfortunately, it's also been shown that if you stop exercising, you lose that again. So you really do need something, and roughly in the same period. So the detraining effect is about as fast as the training effect. So you need something to keep doing it. And the rewards are really big. So there's fitness, VO2 max, also metabolic health. Fantastic benefits in terms of metabolic health and your risk of developing diseases like diabetes. So it's definitely worth it, but it needs to be something that you can continue to do.
Yes, I mean, that is the most important part of fitness and health in general, is consistency. And fad dieting and fad exercising, which is a thing that nobody really talks about, are things too that it takes consistency. And it is interesting to note that in 8 weeks, you can increase your VO2 max by 12%. You probably lose your VO2 max in 8 weeks if you stop doing these types of things. Let's talk about, though, compared to a 30-minute jog, a 5-minute workout on the Carol bike, which is 2 times 20-second sprints over a 5-minute period. How do they compare? And what happens with a 30-minute sprint versus what happens with a Carol bike? So we know actually very precisely and reliably, because that study has been done, and it has been done by Western University, Colorado. They got a couple of bikes from us. They paid for them. It was done completely independently, funded by the American Council on Exercise. It's a non-profit that evaluates new fitness methods, equipment, and so on. Great.
And they had randomized control study, 32 participants. Half did 3 times a week the RE-HIIT workout. So they spent less than half an hour per week on exercise. The other group did 5 times a week, half an hour of moderate intensity exercise. So that's jogging. So they spent 2.5 hours versus less than half an hour. And they did kind of a comprehensive set of tests before and after. And so first, very clearly, exercise works. Yeah. So also the group that did 5 times a week jogging got some very good benefits. They, in those 8 weeks, got a VO2 max improvement of 6.9%. That's really worthwhile. Right. So well done. But the RE-HIIT group on the Carol bikes achieved a VO2 max improvement of 12.3%. So almost double. Yeah.
Wow.
And then the other thing is something called the MetsZ-score. So with all these participants, they've measured a basket of health markers, so blood pressure, cholesterol, triglycerides, waist circumference, and blood sugar levels, and those can be aggregated in something called the MetsZ-score.
Got it.
That's your risk of developing metabolic diseases. Now, the moderate intensity group that went 5 times a week for half an hour jogging got a risk reduction of 26.8%. So that's, again, that's really, really good.
That is amazing.
But the Carol group, the RE-HIIT group, got a reduction of 62%.
No,
so more than double. Yeah,
that's insane.
That is very remarkable. So that's what you would expect from taking a drug like metformin.
Yes.
Just without the downside of taking a drug like metformin, which does have side effects.
Yes.
So very remarkable. And you spend 2 hours less on exercising. So yeah, it's very clear results. And it's not just that one study. It's also been shown over and over again in other studies, sometimes using the Carol bike, sometimes using some lab equipment that doesn't really lend itself to be used at home. But that the workout works, that has been established. And there's no doubt in the scientific community that it works.
Let's talk a bit about that, like the mechanism by which you can decrease a person's risk of metabolic diseases like type 2 diabetes. I'd love to check my mother-in-law's blood and see if she's still pre-diabetic, because she was when she first started the Carol bike. I'd say that being down 20 pounds, there's a chance that has gone down, and also she's been using the bike for about 8 weeks. So, but I'd like to know the mechanism by which that works.
Yeah. So, one thing is, again, linked to these, to the depletion of your glycogen stores. So the insulin plays a really important role in how we store energy, how we store sugar, or how we access it. And when you do these maximum intensity sprints and you mobilize lots of glycogen and you basically empty your emergency energy reserve, your body will want to replenish those as fast as possible.
Got it.
And to do that, you need to have a good level of insulin sensitivity, low level of insulin resistance. And that is exactly, so diabetes or type 2 diabetes is then essentially that people become insulin resistant. And that mechanism of storing fat, storing energy in your cells and accessing it again works much worse. And because you put your body into that situation, it has to get better at that. And the insulin sensitivity improves. And so that is also a thing that helps with weight management. So if you're, so weight management does have a lot to do just with your whether you're in a calorie deficit or not.
Yes.
That's, I think most people would agree with that. But if you're insulin resistant and you're having a hard time to access the energy stored in your fat cells, stored in your muscles, and so on, it becomes much harder to sustain a calorie deficit. Whereas if you have a high level of insulin sensitivity, you're much better positioned to basically access your fat stores and therefore sustain a calorie deficit, and therefore weight management becomes a lot easier than it would otherwise be.
Kind of what I'm hearing you say is that you get better at using the energy that you have. You get better at using the sugar that's in your blood, the insulin, the glycogen. I don't really understand glycogen and insulin that well, but it just sounds to me that that's what you're saying. It's like you get better at using the energy that you have, and therefore kind of taking away the stores that are there. And then your body replenishes itself, and that in itself is a very healthy thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. Let's talk about, because you brought up calories. So I think that's really important because, with Tracy and her weight loss, we have to keep in mind, like, how much food is she consuming, and then how many calories she's burning while she exercises. So a lot of people will be like, it's not possible that in a 5-minute workout you can burn a bunch of calories. What do you say to that?
So they have a point. In 2 20-second sprints, you really burn a relatively modest amount of calories. However, these RE-HIIT sprints and HIIT more broadly creates a really quite large amount of afterburn. So that's a thing called excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. And it's a complicated thing. So there's 7-8 different mechanisms that get worked through, but you can measure it quite easily. So if you do these types of exercises, and you have essentially a gas analyzer on for during the exercise and for the next 3 hours afterwards, we've done that up to 8 hours afterwards. You can measure how much above baseline your calorie consumption is. Yes. And with these extremely high, these RE-HIIT sprints, about 2/3 of the calorie consumption actually happens after you get off the bike. So for 1.5 to 3 hours afterwards, you're still burning energy at an elevated rate. And that means you actually have a meaningful level of energy burn. So when I do these 5 minutes workouts, I burn around 210, 220 calories on and off the bike. So including this afterburn. And that becomes meaningful because my baseline calorie consumption would be maybe around 2,000 calories or so. So then 10% more, that is meaningful.
Yes. It sounds like what happens is that the body, in replenishing itself after you do such a workout, burns calories in order to do so. Yes. And that might be a simplified version of the truth, but that's how I'm thinking about it.
and this is right. And there's like a stack of 7-8 mechanisms, and I couldn't rattle them all down. But yes, so your heart rate and respiratory rate are elevated for a time. Then you have lots of metabolic waste products that the body has to deal with. So all this half metabolized glycogen and lactate needs to be moved on, needs to be basically removed. And that creates afterburn. So there's a whole stack of different things that contribute to that. But the effect, one can measure it quite clearly, and it's 2/3 of the calorie consumption happen after you've got off the bike.
Got it. Just a personal question, because I'm interested in this. I sometimes get into a cold plunge after the HIIT. Would that blunt the effects?
As far as I know, it doesn't. No.
Okay.
So first, the longstanding assumption or kind of generally held belief is that cold exposure doesn't interfere with cardiorespiratory training. There has been the belief that it would blunt the effect of resistance training.
Yeah, hypertrophy training.
But even there, I've just a couple of weeks ago, I've seen a paper published that cold exposure and heat exposure also after resistance training does not
blunt the effects.
Blunt the effect. So if there's one study. Maybe there's other studies coming out later. The science might not be entirely settled, but that was like, I came across that paper just a couple of weeks ago. Here, Andrew Huberman actually kind of posted the link on Twitter, or maybe it was Professor Galpin.
Oh, yeah.
They've just released a series on exercise. Very interesting.
Yeah, Galpin's great.
And yeah, exactly. And he actually posted the paper on Twitter to say, no, it doesn't seem to interfere. So if you feel like a cold plunge after your RE-HIIT workout, by all means do it. Yeah.
I'm trying to get it all done in the morning, mate. That's what's happening. Like, I'm like, if I can get a 5-minute workout in and like building my VO2 max and get in the cold plunge, and I feel like they go well together and in that order, I don't want to go cold plunge to the bike.
And actually, so the cold plunge has some of the same mechanisms in terms of helping you, the healthy effect, because the cold plunge also triggers the release of this PGC1 alpha master regulator of mitochondrial biogenesis. So you're playing into the same adaptation pathways. Even though it's obviously quite different, but you put like two stresses onto your body that have the same mechanism then to make you fitter and stronger.
Before you mentioned something about serotonin and increasing serotonin by using the Carol bike, and I know that we're just on the subject of, cold exposure. Cold exposure increases dopamine or epinephrine. I want to know about that serotonin increase via using the Carol bike. For anybody who doesn't know what serotonin is, if you're depressed, you have a depleted level of serotonin, a chronically slow level of serotonin. So if you're a depressed person or an anxious person, this could be really helpful to you. But please, Ulrich, I'd love to know.
Yeah. So I won't be able to go into all the mega detail on that one, but the key thing there is lactate. So when you exercise anaerobically, and so you don't have so that means not with enough oxygen to burn those carbohydrates. What happens is you break those carbohydrates down into lactate. Lactate is kind of in the muscle. It makes your muscle burn, and it's basically the limit for you to, that's what makes you stop going all out for extended periods. So that's what stops you doing that exercise for too long. And that's why 20 seconds really is enough in terms of how you feel.
Yes.
But then the lactate does get transported into the brain. And now don't ask me for the exact mechanism, but there it plays a role in the production of norepinephrine and serotonin, and therefore helps with reduction of anxiety and improved mood in a way that aerobic exercise doesn't. Because so if you do slow, steady state exercise, you just wouldn't, like, it would take a lot longer to build up lactate levels that are relevant for that mechanism in the brain that affects mood and anxiety, inhibitory control, and so on. So there's high intensity exercise like RE-HIIT has a way to do that, whereas jogging doesn't.
And this use of lactate, like this idea of lactate, because I feel it at the end of the 20-second sprint that I do, the lactate is built up in my legs. Now, does that increase muscle mass? Could it, if you eat enough protein on,
So in fact, we have, has not yet been published. But again, that's Western University, Colorado, and I had sight of some of the data. And we have our own data, of course. What we do know is that the exercise improves power, strength, and power. And also by a meaningful level. So after 8 weeks, we had, apologies that the numbers are all a bit similar, but we had about 14% increase in strength. So if you measure 1 rep max on a squat without doing other things, the participants in that separate study is going to be published soon, so 14% improvement in their maximum strength.
Got it.
In their 1 rep max. So it does clearly for power, strength, have a positive effect as well. Whether it leads to hypertrophy, I don't know. We've not looked at it. My jeans didn't get too small. I'd rather kind of have a smaller jean size.
Yeah.
But certainly, so I also do a bit of lift. So I do resistance training, and I noticed that even without specifically doing like leg day, I'm actually quite good at squats and deadlifts and so on, because I do this RE-HIIT exercise on the Carol bike, and that must have we see it in our data, and it's been shown, or this new paper will show it, that it does have a very positive effect also on strength.
Got it. I know a lot of people are out there listening and going, well, I don't have a Carol bike right now. How can I go and do this? Is there a way to mimic the Carol bike?
Yeah. So first, the research was all done before the Carol bike existed. So clearly it must be possible to do it on something else. And the researchers used some kind of specialized research equipment. Those are bikes that are basically operated by a second person. There are weights hanging off them, and a lab technician controls the bike while you do the exercise. Gives you instructions, operates the bike, and then that's the way how it's been done for a long time. That's how the original research was done. Sadly, it's not very practical for home use. So they're quite expensive, and not everybody has a lab technician kind of at their disposal all the time. So when we came across the research, we were super fascinated by it, fell in love on first sight, and thought, wonderful, I want to do that at home. And I got myself a normal exercise bike and tried to do it, and it's like, no, it's nothing like what I've heard about it.
Yes.
And we spoke with the researchers. We're collaborating with many of the leading scientists in that field. And they advised us, look, it needs to have this, and this. And it just didn't exist at the time. And so it was like 10 years ago now. And we decided, okay, let's develop a consumer friendly option to bring this amazing science to users.
Yeah.
And a bit the kind of the drawbacks of doing it on a regular bike is you need to get the correct resistance.
Yes.
So that wouldn't be quite easy to figure out for on a normal bike. You need to apply it at the right time, and that's basically just after you've picked up a lot of speed. So you start pedaling really fast, and then the resistance has to kick in.
Got it.
And the resistance has to kick in almost instantly. And that's really, really hard to get right on a normal bike.
Yep.
Yeah. So so we've built Carol, and it's optimized for that. It really does that very, very well. It does also a lot of other things, but it's really optimized for that. And so you could try on a normal bike, but it's not great. And I think most people would get it wrong and don't even know what it feels like to do maximum intensity.
Yes.
Now, how else could you do it? I would not try it on a treadmill or a stepper or an elliptical. I think there's just the injury risk is too high.
Yeah.
Body weight, I don't think you'd get to the right levels of intensity. If you have access to an air bike, so that's something like if your gym has an air bike, or in fact, if you have an air bike at home, you can try. That's not a bad way of doing it. There's some drawbacks. So an air bike is essentially a bike with one gear.
It's one level of resistance. He's talking about the assault bikes. Maybe other people would refer to it as an assault bike.
Exactly.
But it's only one gear of resistance. It doesn't get any heavier. It doesn't get any lighter. It's always the same resistance.
And it will, I mean, it gets heavier the faster you go, but there's like an optimum speed for you to reach your maximum intensity. And whereas the air bike has basically one gear, if I may call it like that, our bike has 250 gears.
Right.
So we can optimize it for your mother-in-law, for my mom, who's turning 80 this year and is doing it every other day.
Wow.
We can optimize it for, somebody your age or some 30-year-old CrossFit athlete. We can optimize it for a 20-year-old female. So there's, the air bike is not a bad alternative. Please do try it if you have access to it, by all means. But we've developed that special thing that's just a little bit better.
Something better, exactly. And I just want to make clear to everybody listening, like this thing, the Carol bike, when you go for the 20-second sprint, the first few seconds you're just all out and there's no resistance, and then bam, it kicks in, and then it's pushing against you. And once you've used it a few times, the bike has learned your body and pushes against your body at a resistance that it knows is going to challenge you for 20 seconds. And by that, I look like an animal doing it, by the way. It's a very intimate thing. I don't want people around me looking at me because I'm like foaming at the mouth.
Yeah, exactly. So that is, and I mean, on our website we have videos of models performing that in a relatively controlled way. It does, like, going really all out. I've also filmed myself. I've not yet posted it on. No, I think there are some videos of me competing against others on the bike, and it does look a little bit you look like a madman. You're sprinting. It's crazy. Exactly.
It's supposed to be like that, though. I think that's good. But what's next for you?
One other thing, if you don't have an air bike, one thing, like just a running track. So if you that I think could also be an acceptable alternative. So you don't get all the metrics. Your joints have to be able to sustain sprinting all out on a running track. There would be a trip hazard and so on. But if you just go for a casual jog, casual warm up, 2 minutes, and then run like the devils behind you or tiger for 20 seconds. I think you could mimic that as well. Like, not many people do that. You would probably get some weird looks in the park, but that's a way of doing it. So again, I think if it was possible completely without equipment, we wouldn't have spent 10 years developing specialized equipment for it. Like, we're not that daft. But it is, if you want a really low cost alternative, you can try that.
Love that. Thank you. Now, I want to know what you're developing next. Is there a way, are you going to do something other than the bike? And is there going to be another option? Or what are you developing now? I'd love to know.
So, I can give a little bit an outlook. So, for example, the next thing we're going to release very shortly is focused on adherence and habit forming. So at the moment, our algorithms optimize for performance. So we from ride to ride, adjust the resistance of the exercise so you get to your maximum performance and for maximum benefits. But there's another angle to it, which is how you feel. And how you feel is driven by, for example, like how long the sprints are, how many sprints there are, how long the recovery is in there. And so we will start capturing, and this is actually, that's one of also the scientific community is working on that. Kind of how can we optimize the workout for not just maximum benefit and maximum effectiveness, but also for the best possible emotional response. So we can advise you how long the recovery period should be, how long the sprint period should be. Maybe it's better for you to do slightly more sprints but shorter ones to get to get you to adhere, to basically help you find something that works for you. Even if you get slightly less benefits, that you can stick to it and can fit it into your life, and you will just do it because it feels also nice enough. So that's one thing. And then longer term, I'd love to have something to improve strength, for example.
Yeah.
But there's nothing scheduled yet.
Okay.
So this is something we're interested and look into. And there is actually some pretty cool equipment for strength already on the market.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have some more ideas on that, but there's nothing to announce.
Got it. No, I'm aware of that strength equipment, that stuff that pushes against you. It's kind of similar. It's like AI strength training. It's like the Carol, but strength.
Yeah. Exactly. No, and we can give a shout out. So ARX, they're very clearly not home equipment. Well,
unless you're really rich.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Look, yeah, exactly. So those are very big pieces of equipment that have a quite similar philosophy. That you work for the shortest amount of time, but in that time you go to maximum intensity, and they're also great.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's see. There's certainly tempting.
Yeah. Mate, thanks so much for coming on the show and chatting to us. How do we best keep in contact with you?
Yeah. So first, anybody who would like to experience the bike, first, it's carolbike.com. Do have a look at our website. So for your audience, for your listeners, have a look at the website. We also, I think, we've created a code loop
we'll create a code Zaddy just for the show.
Okay.
That'd be great. We should do that. We haven't talked about that, but
Absolutely.
we should definitely do that.
Yeah. So we're not in stores. So that's it's just not something we do. But we have a really, I would say, industry leading home trial. So you can get the bike. You can try it for up to 100 days. If it's not for you, you just call us and give it back. We pick it up. You get a full refund. If it is for you and you feel the benefits, and 100 days is really long enough to feel the benefits, you keep
Amazing.
it. So that's how we work.
100 days. That's more than 8 weeks. So that you can really.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And, so you will really in that period be able to see, do you get fitter and stronger? And is it something you can stick to? So it's really a good way to try it.
So carolbike.com, and we'll have the code Zaddy for you to go ahead and trial the bike. Are you on social media at all? Can we follow you there?
Yes, absolutely. So at carolbike on pretty much all platforms. Please do follow us.
Okay, great.
And we follow you. Yeah, we love it.
Good. I'm glad I can keep you somewhat entertained. I'm a big fan of the Carol bike.
Absolutely.
I'm very appreciative and very glad to have one in my home. And I'm sure if my mother-in-law was here right now, she'd thank you for what you've done for her. You've given her something that she can adhere to. And I think that's the most important thing, what we mentioned before about consistency, is can you adhere to the exercise that you're doing? Will you stick to it over a long period of time? Health and wellness isn't an 8-week trial. It is an ongoing thing that we need to be doing. And so to give people the opportunity to adhere to their fitness regime, actually adhere to it by doing it, getting the maximum amount of benefit in less time, 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes actually 3 times a week. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.